We all are born with a certain package. We are who we are. Where we were born, who we were born as, how we were raised. We're kind of stuck inside that person, and the purpose of civilization and growth is to be able to reach out and empathize a little bit with other people. And for me, the movies are like a machine that generates empathy. It lets you understand a little bit more about our different hopes, aspirations, dreams, and fears. It helps us to identify with the people who are sharing this journey with us. And that is a quote by Roger Ebert. A really important lesson and a really great message as to why movies of all kinds can be important to a lot of different people. And that's going to kick off kind of this episode about a book that Cassia has just read and has alerted me to. And it's called Our Favorite Movies, How Films Affect Our Mental Health by Anne Fuestel. So Cassia, I'm going to turn it over to you because I've not had a chance to read this. You pointed it out to me, so I am intending to pick up a copy of it. But why don't you tell us a little bit about the book?
All right, so this book I heard about it before I kind of really remembered and dug into the lessons from it, because I do think mental health is important, and I do think that movies and entertainment can play a big role in our collective mental health, individual mental health. And so I kind of just, when I got this book, kind of regrettably on Amazon and not my, local indie bookstore, I kind of just inhaled it, and just really went through it really quickly. And what I liked is that the author, Anne Fuestel, was so open about her own journey with mental health, and she kind of starts off a bit with, I guess, a memoir of her mental health journey, and it's a journey she's still on, kind of like we're all working on ourselves, and and she was always open about like how certain movies made her feel. Like, I never felt like she was too guarded. Like, I always kind of think like that's sometimes my problem is like I don't like to appear weak and stuff, so I kind of just like don't talk about things that are hard for me or like very personal to me. But I really appreciated her openness, because she says like she was in like a mental health institution a few times, and she's kind of found what works for her. She's a champion for people with mental health challenges, and she stands up for that, and I found it very admirable. And then she kind of gets into some of what cinema therapy is, like cinetherapy,
Okay.
which is like using movies to kind of help people with mental health. And I thought this was kind of a recent phenomena, but it was actually like talked about, I think, in the 1940s at the earliest. So I found that interesting, and she kind of talks about Gary Solomon's works, Birgit Woltz's work, and so if you really want to understand kind of what cinema therapy is, you can read this book, or you can look up Gary Solomon and Birgit Wolz, and you can kind of understand, like, it's kind of best if people talk about the movies in groups, and the goal is growth, not escapism. So it's kind of different from just like, kind of aimlessly. It's more about having a goal with these movies, like thinking about different questions and kind of saying like, did the character do this right here? Why was it right, or why was it wrong? So it's kind of like bringing a certain structure to watching movies with, which is different than just like mindless escapism, even though sometimes we need that. I think cinetherapy, I kind of have been unofficially doing it, I think, this year and like throughout Corona, and like because there was a lot of things that were just shut down. So then I kind of learned a whole lot more about empathy, a whole lot more about different ways of interpreting and experiencing the world, because I did grow up kind of in an insular community. So that's why I really identified with the quote from Roger Ebert about movies being empathy machines, because I think movies have helped me develop empathy and helped me as like my mental health might not be where I want it to be. What do you think about cinetherapy, and have movies helped you?
Yeah, I think absolutely, and yeah, the quote does a really good job of kind of laying out, you know, what that means, because yeah, in order to kind of broaden your exposure to things in the world and different ideas and ways you can kind of process your own feelings and emotions. Movies are a great kind of mechanism to do that with, right? Because we all live in kind of our own, in our own homes with our own families, within our own communities. But that is a very, very small, like infinitely small, like, percentage of the whole world. So, you might not be getting the kind of, the kind of feedback or the kind of, empathy towards yourself for the way that you feel or the way that you feel about other people, just within your own community. So it's a great kind of window to the rest of the world. So yeah, so definitely. And yeah, I mean, movies are a really good way of, being able to kind of identify some things, within yourself, the way that you feel about things, the way that you process things, because, no two people are, 100% alike. So even, within your own family or friend group or, school or whatever, you're not going to have like a one for one comparison, so you can start kind of picking things out of movies, obviously, but stories, and it's something we've talked about in the past about why stories are important. But yeah, definitely, seeing those things visually acted out in front of you is really important. And we kind of did a little bit of not like a deep dive, but more kind of hyper focused on Star Wars back in episode 99, which came out back in November of 2021, when we were joined by 501st Help to talk about how, Star Wars, could play a big part in, addressing and helping with people's mental health and mental fatigue and things like that. So obviously, that was geared more towards Star Wars. But yeah, if you broaden that out, in all of cinema, that's a lot of worlds and a lot of characters, and a lot of, different aspects of life and different viewpoints and perspectives that can come into focus and do a really good job of helping you, kind of, feel better about, the things in your own life, to take a break, to, help with mental fatigue, to help you, kind of regain focus and gain confidence, kind of all of those things you can pick up from movies of all different types. And, it's hard to say where, those feelings might come from, and they're going to be different for every person. That's why if you ask, 100 people what their favorite, movies are, they're all going to be different, of course. So, yeah, I think that this is a really good way to address your own kind of mental health. And yeah, especially, over the last couple of years, it's definitely been something that's needed for sure.
Yeah, and just a reminder, neither Brian or I are mental health professionals, but we are just kind of talking about what helps us. The key is to just find a mental health professional, someone to talk to that has your best interests and growth at heart, and you can discuss maybe if cinetherapy is right for you, or they can suggest like how to incorporate it into your life. Maybe it doesn't work for you, but the key is just to keep mental health professionals in the conversation. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely make sure that if you if you're in need of help or struggling, or even just want to talk to, definitely there are a lot of good resources out there, and we'll make sure to put some that we like in the show notes. But definitely reach out and open those conversations, because that ultimately is what's very important. So
yeah, and I thought that the author chose a good selection of movies that were positive, and I could definitely see why she chose them from a cinetherapy lens. So I'll just kind of read these by title. Inside Out came out in 2015. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, 2004. Fried Green Tomatoes, 1991. A League of Their Own, 1992. Defending Your Life, 1991. The Princess Bride, 1987. Big Business, 1988. Tommy Boy, 1995. When Harry Met Sally, 1989. Joe versus the Volcano, 1990. Little Women, 1994. And Contact, 1997. Are you familiar with any of those movies?
Yeah, I've seen the majority of those films. And yeah, I could definitely see why those would be really good kind of representations of what makes for a good movie, kind of in the story that those are telling and the way that they make you feel. Because when I think about movies for myself of things that kind of help with my my own mental health, my mental fatigue and just stress and things, a lot of the films that I tend to go back to time and time again are movies that I grew up with. So a lot of those, for myself anyway, a lot of those late 80s, early 90s films, A League of Their Own, When Harry Met Sally, The Princess Bride, I have here on my list too. Those are things that I can put on and they instantly kind of take me back to kind of maybe a place before, you have like the pressure of the world. It's kind of like a childlike innocence, so to speak, but it just, it kind of transports you back when you're like, oh, I don't, all this stuff that's going on in the world. And, I didn't have these same stresses and pressures, or at least they were different. It's not necessarily an like an escapism mechanism. It's just kind of like transporting you into a different place where you can kind of be away from that and let your brain kind of like recharge and rethink and reposition itself, and get you prepared to go back into the world.
Yeah, and just kind of looking at her list again, Inside Out was probably one of the best movies I've seen about mental health, like, in recent years. Mm-hmm. Just kind of like being able to see, like, a teenage girl, like, have to deal with a move, and how it affects her emotions, how it affects her family's emotions, and kind of, like, you're able to see, like, the emotions, like, literally kind of, like, personified. And just, like, the message that it's okay to cry sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
It's not a message, like, I got a lot growing up, but it just made sense when I heard it,
Yeah, Inside Out is a really great example of a film that's, kind of identifying and displaying, different aspects of people's mental health. And actually, that's a Pixar film. I think that's one of the things that Pixar has done really well. Obviously, this is kind of the penultimate of that, but it really kind of dissects a lot of kind of inner struggles that people have, and the way that they present it and the stories that they can tell are very important, and important to bring those things into light. Like, we had something that just came out last year, Turning Red by Pixar, and that spoke to a whole a whole giant portion of society that had never kind of had maybe the kind of the runway to have conversations and talk about stuff like that. But having a movie like that, that the whole family sits down,
film.
it literally, yeah, that's right, just like Agora, it's literally a period film. But it creates like a vehicle to have conversations and to make you feel like you're not alone, or this is it's not just me, that a lot of people are struggling with this. So I think that's a really good kind of illustration in an illustrated movie about why these movies are so important.
Yeah. And then I can't personally speak to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Fried Green Tomatoes, but Eternal Sunshine, it's I think it's like about like two people who were in love, but they wanted to erase their memories. And then Fried Green Tomatoes is about a friend who helps her friend escape an abusive marriage. So I guess it could be Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I don't know if it's a happy film or not. I've never seen it, but it seems like it would be a good examination. Kind of like maybe the inverse of Inside Out, you know? And then Fried Green Tomatoes, haven't seen it. I haven't ever tried fried green tomatoes either, so if anyone out there has, let us know if they're good. But
delicious.
Yeah. One film I have seen recently because of this book is A League of Their Own. So, what do you think from that movie is a good mental health message?
Let's see. So some of the positive messages for A League of Their Own, we actually just covered this a couple weeks back on Drink the Movies, and it's a film that I grew up watching a lot. And I think that there are, a lot of really good things that are covered in that film. Obviously, it's, it's telling a story about the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, which I think is important for empowering women and little girls and young women, kind of illustrating that. But you also have kind of the it's set along this backdrop of World War II. You have a lot of family dynamics and struggles and stresses of being on the road and things like that, and feeling isolated and removed from your family, and a family kind of abrasion there between Dottie and Kit, the sisters. So I think that movie does a really good job on a couple of fronts of, telling a story that, encompasses a lot of different things that people could be experiencing, or, multiple things that people are experiencing. And it's set against this backdrop of this very kind of hopeful, kind of proud thing for these women to be out, presenting themselves and their skills and their capabilities to the world. So it's uplifting in that sense. But yeah, it deals with a lot of kind of personal struggles and, things that people deal with in their day-to-day lives and, professionally, and how they are out and, perceived in the world.
Yeah. And it was a good film, and I'm glad I finally saw it all the way through. I think I've seen parts of it on TV, but then when I was on a flight, I was able to finally see it start to finish. And I was like, yeah, I just did that. So I felt accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, and that one came out, I'm not sure the exact year that came out, but I'd have been pretty young. So yeah, I mean, that was a film that I grew up watching a bunch of times. And yeah, stuff like that, I think it's, like I said, on one hand, it's just a very important kind of story. It's not, one for one historically accurate, but it sheds light on something that a lot of people, wouldn't know about. The All-American Girls Professional Baseball League was a very real thing. And, without that film, a lot of people wouldn't know about it, that it even existed at all. So it's important on that front, as well as, being, really important, and looking at, family dynamics and all that other stuff that I just mentioned. So.
Yeah. And then I haven't seen Defending Your Life. Have you seen that one?
No, I am not familiar with that one.
Yeah. It's kind of like, it has Meryl Streep in it, so it's good,
So it's good,
and yeah.
5 stars.
And it's kind of like this person dies, and the goal is to move on to what there is to move on to, rather than be reincarnated. So they have to defend, like, their life. Like, did they live out of fear, or did they live out of love, And so I'll have to see that one day. But what I definitely have seen is The Princess Bride, and I think it's just the perfect nostalgic mental health film that makes you feel good. What about you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Princess Bride is a fantastic film. It's very quotable, but it's one of those films, and a lot of the films, when I look back and think about movies that I liked growing up, and are still things that I'll put on from time time to time, and it's not so much that it's like a background noise kind of thing, because I do that too. I do that more with like TV shows, but movies I'll put it on because it's like engaging and intelligent enough to kind of hold your attention. But you don't necessarily need to be like hyper focused on it because you've seen it so many times. But yeah, I mean, it just tells such a great story, and the writing, and ultimately it's a story that's very hopeful. It's about your one true love, and fighting for that. So it's uplifting in that sense, and it's exciting, and it takes you back to a place where you're remembering all of the lines and stuff like that. And I think that for for me personally, when I'm thinking about films that are affecting my mental health in a good way, they are things that are ultimately, even though some of them, have kind of a darker tone, or are more somber, ultimately they're all stories about hope and finding happiness, and doing your best in a world that could be bad. But something like The Princess Bride, I mean, it is a very fun film and has this great message of hope and perseverance, and fighting for your true love. And I think that that's a great example of something like that.
Yeah, and then I haven't seen Big Business or Tommy Boy. Have you seen those ones?
I've not seen Big Business. I have seen Tommy Boy, which was the comedy that starred David Spade and Chris Farley, of course, the late Chris Farley, and that was kind of in this period where those two were, doing all these comedies coming out of Saturday Night Live. So just a really fun movie, and yeah, I would imagine that one is pretty nostalgic for a lot of people. I remember that one from my youth, and kind of those movies. Again, something similar to like The Princess Bride, that's that's highly quotable, and you can kind of get lost in the story because you've seen it and you're so familiar with the characters, and a lot of humor in there, which is definitely good. It's always nice to have a like a true like actual comedy that you can lose yourself in for a little bit. I think is good.
Yeah. But I have seen When Harry Met Sally, and I like that it has like just some dots at the end, like period, period, and
yeah,
because it just is a funny title. But yeah, like for me, like When Harry Met Sally, I think it's like the most true to life rom-com, and it has some good messages about friendship and like being able to grow. You really get to see these characters through about like so many years of their lives, and you see like how they intersect and kind of learn. And you get to see the late great Carrie Fisher in an incredible role. Like there's a romance, B romance, and I don't know, like it just made me happy, and it's hilarious. And if you ever want things to get awkward, you can listen to it on a plane, and then just try not to laugh,
That's right. Just full volume on a plane or in a diner, and you'll be all set. But yeah, well, as someone, I don't particularly care for romantic comedies, generally speaking, but When Harry Met Sally is probably one of the absolute best, if not the best, because yeah, it's very, it feels very realistic in the story that they're telling, and I feel like being in the position of Harry or Sally is something that a lot of people can identify with and put themselves in the shoes, or put yourself in the shoes of the best friend there, Carrie Fisher, in the story too. So absolutely a great film, and a really good one to kind of identify that love lost and that friendship, and when those roads cross and go back and forth. But yeah, excellent film, and really good example, I think.
Yeah. And then the final three: Joe versus the Volcano, Little Women, in Contact. Guess which one I've seen?
I'm going to say Joe versus... No, I'm just kidding. Little Women would be my guess, but...
Yeah, that's the one I've seen. So I've seen like basically every version of it. So I think it's a special story that like you kind of grow up with in school. Maybe it's kind of like America's Jane Austen, and you get to see the different struggles that different, I guess, challenges, struggles, and kind of hopes and dreams that four different sisters have. And it's kind of fun to just kind of be like, am I this sister? Am I that sister? And I think it's a classic. I guess, like, as a guy, like, have you ever seen that?
I have seen Little Women, a few of the different iterations to it. Yeah, I mean, it tells us obviously a really good story about these sisters, and how that kind of family dynamic and the love between them, and then like the external love, how they're projecting it out are it's a really great story. And I would imagine, I not a sister, I don't have a sister, but I imagine that if you did, that there are a lot of kind of parallels to your own life that you could see, and find some catharsis in seeing how those situations are handled, by these women in this film or in the book. So I think that would be a really good, and obviously that's why it's been remade dozens of times. It's just a story that just resonates generation after generation.
Yeah, so I think it's a great movie, and I think that's why it's remade. It's also probably because it's pre-copyright, so Disney can't be like, we own that, so...
that certainly helps. The money definitely helps, but yeah, every time there's a version of it, it seems like it's really well beloved. All the versions always seem to do really good, come award season and things like that. Because, like I said, I think it's one of those stories that kind of transcends itself, and it's applicable, 50 years ago, and it's still applicable today. Because I think the last one just came out like 2 years ago, I think in 2020 maybe, or something like that. So
I think it was 2019. It was the before times.
In the before
the
times.
Corona. So, as they say. But yeah, what are some of your movies that you would classify under your mental health happy movies?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of movies here, and pretty much when I was thinking about this, when you were talking to me about this book, and that we wanted to record a little bit of an episode talking kind of about the book and just about movies. Really for me, they kind of fell into two categories. So it was either films that I grew up loving that, kind of, like I'd said, kind of resonate and take me back to a different time and a place in my own life. And, not necessarily as like an escapist sort of a thing, but, just to kind of change your paradigm for 2 hours as you're watching this thing. So I think back to things that I really loved growing up. Princess Bride, I'd mentioned, stuff like Jaws and Planet of the Apes. Those were movies that I'd put on. We'd watch on like the Sunday matinee, which is for all you youngsters out there listening. We used to have a TV, and you'd have to watch whatever was on. But watching those Sunday matinees with my dad, and stuff like Apollo 13 that I found very exciting and very interesting from someone that loved science, but then also kind of the hopefulness of what brilliant people can do when they put their minds to doing something and achieving a common goal. I love stuff like that, which is why I really like documentaries as well. Just seeing people that are just brilliant kind of do their thing has always been really appealing to me. But then on the other hand, I really like kind of worlds that I can get absorbed in, especially like big, like ensemble things, because then there's a lot of characters to kind of pick and choose what you see. I see I like to think of myself as brave like this character, but vulnerable like this character, and I want to be in love and happy like these characters. So I think of things like the Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, just like these big universes that you can kind of be absorbed into, and you don't have necessarily like one figure that you're identifying with, but you can kind of see yourself in a lot of different characters in a lot of situations. And then obviously the Star Wars being the big one for me, and I would imagine most of the people listening to the
Star
podcast
Wars is
now,
okay. You
Yeah,
know?
Star Wars is okay, but just kind of these big worlds that you can get lost in and see yourself playing different roles. I think is really good. Something that I like for my I like to to tune in to my own mental health. And then kind of one last little category that I had here for my own films. I I really like holiday films. I like the way that they make me feel, and kind of the place that they take me to as we get closer to the Christmas holiday time every year. You always watch the same ones, and they kind of take you back to they take you into this like headspace that gets you ready for that. It gets you ready for the family and the traditions and stuff. And I'm fortunate enough to have a good place for that. So, stuff like It's a Wonderful Life is something that I look forward to watching every year because, A, it's an amazing movie, but B, it really resonates with me and kind of the tone and the way that I, see those characters and feel about myself and, kind of the... what I really enjoy kind of the darker aspects of it, but then ultimately it's this, very kind of hopeful and happy tale, as it culminates into it. So stuff like that for me. But what about you, Cassia? I know you've probably got a list of movies you've been crushing the movie watching the last couple years. So
Yeah, my mental health movies list is maybe really long, but I separated it into 3 different kind of lessons, like movies that taught me lessons, survival, and hope. I'll kind of start with taught me lessons. Little Women 2019, it taught me a lot of lessons about life, love, friendship, sisterhood, familyhood. I don't know if familyhood is a name, but is a word. I mean,
yeah.
But familyhood. It should be a name. Revenge of the Sith, it's kind of hilarious because Fuestel's movies are all happy ending ones for the most part, and then mine is I learned stuff from Revenge of the Sith. I learned what not to do from that movie. It's kind of like a tragic Greek opera, So, yeah. And it's just the best of the Star Wars prequels, in my opinion, and just a good time. And then Everything Everywhere All at Once taught me a whole bunch of lessons, and I'm still learning from it, and I need to watch it again and again, because it's kind of just one that just came out,
And Everything Everywhere All at Once is a perfect example of a film that really... it's amazing. You should go out and see it, everyone, if you haven't. But it does a really good job of tackling sort of multiple fronts of things that could be affecting you, and how they all kind of culminate together at the end is absolutely beautiful. So so that's an excellent example of one. Sure.
Yeah. And then survival. I don't know if you've ever heard of the film Kon-Tiki. It was, I believe it's a 1953 documentary that some Norwegians who were sailing from, South America to some of the Pacific Islander, islands in the middle of the Pacific, they were on a raft, and they sailed that whole way, kind of,
Okay.
and... I just thought it was really cool because, they did this, a few years after World War II, and it's just an amazing story, and it made me feel hopeful, and I did see the dramatized movie. It wasn't my favorite because I think it kind of, was a little bit cliche, but what I loved is, it says in the credits, after World War II, people needed to, believe in, adventuring and, discovering things more about the world rather than destroying it. And I think that's what they did on this on that expedition, like in a raft in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It was a lot about teamwork, seeing different animals, survival. And also, I believe this was Norway's first Oscar in 1953. So Kon-Tiki got that done. And I believe this film is free on Tubi, if you can see that. So, yeah, I love Kon-Tiki. And maybe it's just me, but I'm like, I love this so much. And maybe people are like, yeah, it's great. But I just love it. It's just so different, and it always gets me hopeful and curious again. So, and then Alpha, it's about like the first dog. And one thing I think I've kind of realized is that some of the films I like are where like people have to survive against all odds, and maybe we don't remember their names, but their influence is felt, like afar off. And like there's remnants of them, and like this is the story of the first dog. So like all of us who have dogs, like there had to be a first dog, and yeah, and we love doggos,
That's right.
But yeah, so I love that movie for that reason. And then Cave of Forgotten Dreams is a Werner Herzog documentary, and I think I love it for like the same reason. Like humanity had to survive, but we leave behind prints on a wall that can still be seen today, and survival is hard, but like people found stuff to do rather than just merely survive, and it's a great Werner Herzog documentary. He has an incredible voice for documentaries, and it's like about something I love, so of course I'm gonna dig it, and then Pompeii, one of my favorite films ever. No one else really likes it, but that's okay. I think I love it because of the end, and I don't want to spoil it too much, but like, even if someone is a slave or is kind of overlooked because they're a woman, and the Roman nobility, like, what we do matters, and maybe we don't think we leave things behind, but we do, and that's why I love Pompeii so much. And then I think the hope. Hope is a great lesson. Hope is sometimes not very practical, but to continue on when you have no hope is the definition of hope. And I love The Adventures of Robin Hood because it's just a fun, colorful adventure that I think gets people into older films, and it's a great, accessible film for like all ages. And you don't have to overcomplicate Robin Hood with like the fate of the Western world, like it can just be Robin Hood saves Maid Marian from getting married, and it's just that simple, but it's just that good. And I loved Little Women 2019, kind of because of I guess, like, looking back, the different flashbacks have different tones, like, her childhood, Joe's childhood, kind of looks a little bit more bright, a little bit more optimistic, and then when certain things happen, it becomes a little bit dull, but then you kind of find the new normal and you find new happiness, and who knows what happened in the end, like whether she runs off with the boy or not, but it's open to interpretation. It's a great adaptation of the classic Little Women's story. And then, guess which Star Wars film I find the most hopeful?
I don't know. It could be A New Hope, because it's right in the title.
That would have been a great transition, but it's Return of the Jedi. So
Okay. Yep, that's fair.
it's just a solid, we got like the most hopeful Star Wars film in my perspective and like the least hopeful in my perspective represented on this list. And then I do love the Cocteau and Disney version of Beauty and the Beast. It kind of just gets me into that childhood, innocence, kind of way of seeing the world in a fairy tale. Like any curse can be lifted, love conquers all, stuff like that. I'll end with Paperman, which maybe taught me too many hopeful lessons about love, but sometimes like life can just be so isolating, and that's why this little short film is in black and white, and like it's in New York, because sometimes like when you're in a big city, sometimes it can just feel stifling and alone, but like sometimes things work out, and no one can guarantee them if they'll work out forever or things will work out for everyone, but Paperman, just the music and the animation just always gets me hopeful, and yeah, so my list is very different from Anne Fuestel's and a bit different from yours, but like I guess that's a lesson, like we all find different things hopeful. We learn lessons from different things, and I'm like, wow, I really am into survival more than I thought I was.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting, as we kind of ran through ours, and you kind of walked us through kind of the ones that Anne Fuestel had highlighted in her book, but that's one of the really neat things about stories and about films is we're coming into it, and the lights go down and the movie comes on, and then we're all watching it through the lens of the life experience that we've had and the lives that we're living, and kind of the ideas and thoughts that we have. So everyone watches movies differently. No two people see a film or read a book or listen to a song exactly the same way. So yeah, I mean, it's on one hand, you have kind of these themes, and obviously the bigger ones, the Star Warses and things like that of the world. But yeah, you're taking your own self into a film, and you're meeting it kind of halfway there with what the film directors and producers and writers and cinematographers all were setting out to take. So on one hand, the movie is coming at you, but on the other hand, you're coming back at the movie with the way that you think about it. So yeah, I think everyone's lists are going to be different in what they find mentally refreshing and mentally healing, and just kind of refreshing, all of those things. So that makes sense that our lists are different, and I think that's one of the really cool things about movies, is that no two people can see them exactly the same.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back into Roger Ebert's quote about empathy. Like, we don't see things the same, but stories and films can help break down what divides us and build more empathy. And I definitely agree with his sentiment that films are empathy machines. And I've noticed it as I've just tried to increase watching movies the last couple of years. Maybe I went a little bit too much, but I'm just kind of catching up on the films I didn't see growing up, and just kind of learning more about the world around me, and I mean, maybe that's like, I don't want to presume, but is that one of the reasons you do drink the movies?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so Drink the Movies was kind of born of this, desire just to talk about movies and to learn more about movies. And obviously here on the Old Republic podcast, as we kind of walked through, our own movie adaptation, and over on that podcast, like it's just so interesting to me. And I just kind of hit on it there, but two people can watch the same movie and have completely different reactions to it, mentally, viscerally. It's so wild to think about something. I might look at something and say, oh man, I love how the lighting in this looks, because I can see things very visually. But someone else, like you, Cassia, might watch it and be like, oh, that dialogue right there didn't work for me, I hate it, I don't know what you're talking about, or vice versa. And I think that it's just really interesting, as as a medium. There are so many things to kind of look at and identify with, and feel the effects of. I love it. And yeah, it's when starting Drink the Movies was obviously because we like talking about movies, and talking about movies that one of the two of us really liked and the other one didn't, or trying to like sell the idea of what you really like about a movie, I think is good, because then that opens up conversations and helps people kind of broaden the way that you see things. If you really love someone and you're able to kind of explain why that is to someone, and have them identify with it, or vice versa, or and yeah, ultimately that all goes back to that that quote we gave at the beginning. It just widens your own sort of pre-instilled bias, and just opens the door to this whole other world that you hadn't seen or experienced or lived in before, and it gives you a little 2-hour window to do that.
Yeah. And we always love kind of getting meta and examining stories in our little Inspired a Galaxy episodes. We're always grateful for our listeners, even if we're not overtly talking about Revan, or HK-47's epic one-liners, So thank you for listening, and maybe tell us in the comments what your favorite movies are, and may the Force be with you.